You know, Stranger Things was this massive global thing. But that ending? Yeah, that's another story, isn't it? So today we're going to dig into the controversy and look at some surprisingly public evidence of what might have gone so wrong.
I mean, it is really hard to overstate just how huge this show was. For years, right? Stranger Things wasn't just something you watched on TV, it was a total cultural event. It felt like this shared experience that captured the imagination of literally millions of people all over the world. And yet, that ending, it became one of the most divisive finales in the last decade? A huge chunk of the fan base just felt completely let down. And the real question here isn't just what went wrong, it's why.
Okay, so let's get into it. An unfiltered look inside, the source of the controversy. Now, according to one really scathing critique, the answers weren't even hidden. Nope. In fact, they were basically broadcast for the whole world to see in this surprisingly candid behind-the-scenes documentary about the show's final season.
So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to break down the arguments from that critique, and we're going to do it using the creator's own words, straight from that documentary, to try and figure out how the final season went off the rails. All right, Section 2, the reluctant writers, the core of the conflict. The critique's main argument, the big one, it starts right at the beginning. It's all about a fundamental problem, the creator's own relationship with, the actual art of writing.
And here it is. This is the quote that the analysis basically holds up as the smoking gun. Ross and I had no interest in writing at all. We wanted to direct. The argument is that this isn't just some off-the-cuff comment. It's the potential root cause of every single story problem that came later. They wanted to direct, and writing, that was just a chore they had to get through.
And this next quote, it just digs that hole a little deeper. We were focused on what we thought the industry wanted, writing bad script after bad script. So it frames their whole early view of writing not as a passion, not as an art, but as this painful obstacle. The critique's point is that this mindset, this feeling, it stuck around, even when they were on top of the world. All right, next up, contradictions and chaos, a pattern of problems. So you might be asking, how did this big core issue actually show up in the final product? Well, the source argues it led straight to a completely chaotic production process, one just filled with contradictions and problems that they knew about but never fixed.
And here's the first huge red flag that the critique points to. This quote right here. "We went into production without having a finished script for the finale." Think about that. They started filming maybe the most anticipated TV finale of the year without knowing how it was going to end.
And let's be super clear about the stakes here. This wasn't some indie low-budget experiment. The source points to a budget of over $400 million. That is an insane financial gamble on a story that, when the camera started rolling, wasn't even finished yet. And this is where the critique really zeroes in on a major contradiction. On the one hand, you've got their stated rule. You can't leave anything dangling. You have to wrap everything up. Okay, sounds good. But on the other hand, the documentary apparently shows them in the writer's room doing the exact opposite, saying things like, "We keep it ambiguous. Let's leave it vague. It probably happened off screen. It's a total disconnect." Okay, this next one is wild. It's a moment from the documentary that the critique just jumps all over. You can see the writing team themselves talking, and they point out a huge, massive logic hole in a big action scene. They're like, how are we going to do the battle? It'll just catch them instantaneously. They know the monster is too fast, that a chase makes no sense, and they did the scene anyway. So you see the picture that's being painted, right? The crucial point here is that these aren't just one-off mistakes. The critique argues it's a clear pattern. You've got filming without a final script, ignoring plot holes they themselves found, contradicting their own story rules, adding a ton of new characters to a cast that was already enormous, and even refusing to wrap up character arcs just to keep things fun. It all adds up to what the source calls a fundamentally messy final season. Which brings us to a huge, huge question. A tale of hubris? We can't miss? I mean, if the creators and their whole team knew about these flaws, why on earth did they just keep going? And maybe the crazier question is, why would you release a documentary showing everyone all of this? Well, the argument that's put forward is basically a theory of hubris. The idea is that the show was just so big, so beloved, that they started to operate with this we can't miss kind of attitude. They just assumed the finale was going to be such a banger that nobody would care about the mess behind the scenes, that the success would forgive everything.
And this is the final, damning conclusion of the whole analysis. That quote says it all. They know all of the flaws in their own show,
and they just decide to not do anything about it. The point is that the problems with the final season weren't accidents. They weren't oversights. According to this source, they were conscious choices made by people who knew exactly what the consequences were and just did it anyway.
And that leaves us with his final, really provocative question. A question that's bigger than just Stranger Things, right? When creators can see the flaws in their own process, why push forward anyway? It's really a question about creative responsibility, about the insane pressures of success, and what happens when that "we can't miss" confidence maybe overshadows the discipline you need to actually stick the landing.